Okay, let's get started with our second firing. The first one was when we applied the wash. Now in this second firing, I'm going to do the shadow brow, the first coat on the mouth, and the nostrils. Okay, on this particular head, I'm going to use my darker brown color, which is Jumeau brow. And I'm going to start by applying medium to the head. So I'm going to take my Super Doll sponge and I'm going to apply a very thin coat of medium to the eyebrow area. Now remember, don't have this too thick. You know, you don't want so much medium on there that it's dripping. You just want a nice, smooth, even coat. Okay, now as you start your shadow brow, one thing I want to tell you is if you go to take your eyebrow that you've attempted off, you know, which I'm sure a lot of you will not be able to get it on in the first try, you're going to want to try and do it several times. Make sure after you've cleaned the paint off really well with just water, you know, if you're using medium number 1 and magic medium, those are water-based mediums, and will clean up just fine with some water. After you've cleaned the area very well, before you attempt to try another shadow brow, make sure you reapply your medium. If you do not have the thin coat of medium on there, the technique that I use for applying the shadow brow will not work. Okay, so I'm going to start by, my brush has been sitting here a little bit, so I'm going to rinse it out in some water. Then I'm going to run it through the magic medium on my tile. Okay, let me see if I can get this paint over here to where you can see it a little bit. Okay, I'll find it here yet. I know it's here somewhere. Okay, I'm going to take the brush that I've ran in a little bit of medium, and I'm going to place that in my paint mixture, and I'm going to work the medium into the corner of the paint mixture and make sure that it streaks really nicely out on the tile. Let me see if I can. Yeah, see, my mixture is just the right consistency where it blends very nicely on the tile. Okay. Now, I'm going to start by placing dots on the brow bone. So let me put these on here and then I'll hold them up for the camera so you can see a little better. Okay, I'm going to start by placing one up from the outside edge of the nostril. So this one's going to go straight up from the nostril. I'm applying that on the brow bone. Okay, then I'm going to go over a little bit, following the brow bone. Another one, another one, another one. Now I'm following the path of that brow bone. Okay, let's see if you can see the dots this time. I'm not sure how close I can actually get this. Okay. There you go. That's a fairly good picture. Okay, now I'm going to put the dots on the other side on the brow bone so I can match these two up. Okay, same thing. I'm going to dip in a little bit of the paint. And then I'm going to apply the dots here. Okay, again, I'm going to start in the center by the nose, just up from the edge of the nostril. Then I'm going to apply another one next to it there, following the brow bone. I'm going to go to the other side here. Okay, now I've got two sets of dots on the brow bone. When I look at them, they're following the bone pretty closely. Okay, now I'm going to adjust this camera just a little bit. Okay, now I'm going to add the paint to the brush. I'm still using the same brush, by the way, which is Sealy's medium area brush, SBR 28. And I'm going to make short little strokes here, connecting these dots together. Now I have my paint just the right consistency to where it's very translucent on my head. It's not on too thick, it's not globby. It's just very translucent. I'm making short little strokes that connect my dots together. Okay, my eyebrow is going to be a little bit thinner on each end and a little bit thicker when I get to the middle. Okay, here's the start of that one. Now, let me go in and paint the other one. Oops, I got a little piece of fuzz there I need to get out. Okay, so again, okay, maybe you can see from there. Okay, I'm going to take little short strokes and I'm going to connect these dots together. And I'm painting very lightly. I can always add more paint. It's just a little bit more difficult to take it off if I've got too much. Okay, I need a little bit more paint on my brush, so I'm going to dip in. Let me see if I can get this over here a little bit closer. I've dipped in a little bit of medium and then I'm running it through the paint on my tile. Okay, now I'm going to go back over this brow just a little bit, add just a little bit more paint on there. Okay, now I'm going to add a little bit more paint to this side. But it's still very thin and translucent. I'm able to blend this to where there's hardly any brush strokes in it. Okay, now I've got my two shadow brows on there. Now I want to refine them. I'm going to take, this is an old Sealy's medium square shader. They do not make this brush anymore. They make it, but it's not like this one. They've changed the design of it a lot. The original old ones work the best, but you can still get this brush. It's a medium square shader. I'm not sure of the number. I'm thinking it's SBR01, something similar to that. But I can look it up for you if you need to know it. They also have, they were called, oh, I can't think of them at the moment. They were a blender brush also. SBR, I'm just not sure of the number. I'll have to get that to everybody if you want it. But it's a white handled brush with black bristles, and you could sweep over your eyebrow with it. So I'm going to show you how I'm going to use this. Okay, I've painted my eyebrows on here. The law of attraction applies that the minute I paint a shadow brow, any little bit of lint that's flying around in the air here is probably going to come down and land in my shadow brow. So I'm going to use this medium square shader like a sweeper. I'm going to go in and make sure my paint is totally smooth and all the lint is removed. If I have some lint that's stuck in my shadow brow, when I go to fire, the lint is going to fire away, but it's also going to take some of the paint with it. So it's going to leave a mark in my shadow brow, which you see a lot of times in the antique dolls, but I'd prefer not to have those marks in mine. So I'm going to make sure that they're totally smooth. So with this brush, I am going to just very lightly, I'm going to take this brush, sweep over my shadow brow. Now I can barely feel that I'm touching this. In fact, I really don't even feel that I'm touching it, but I can see the paint moving. So I know that I am. This takes an extremely light touch. You'll get used to it after you've done it several times. That I'm just barely going over that paint with. Same way with this one. I'm going to do this side. I'm making sure that my paint is totally smooth. Okay. Almost to the end. Okay, now this is an old small square shader. This I've got worn down about halfway. So this was a Sealy's small square shader. This is what I'm using to actually shape the brow. Oh, hold on a second. I've got some fuzz on that I need to get off. Okay, like if my eyebrow is too thick in a spot, I'm going to lay this brush down, run it along the edge like this, and that will, I can thin down the eyebrow with it. I can also make a tapered point. I can drag the eyebrow down a little bit. If it's too long, I can move the brush back and forth like this, and it'll erase the paint. The only way this works, though, is if you have that thin coat of medium underneath there. If you don't have the medium, it's not going to move for you. Okay, now this one on this side is almost exactly what I want. Okay, this side, I've got a little bit of a dip to the outside edge here. I don't know if you can see that or not. It kind of dips down just a little bit right in there. So I'm going to take this brush, I'm going to run it along the bottom edge, and that'll raise my eyebrow up just a little. Blot off all the extra paint. Then I can come back in and form my ending tip to my shadow brow here. I want it to taper into a little bit finer tip on the end. Okay, same way with here at the front. I want this to taper down just a little bit, so I'm going to run the brush across the top, smooth it up from the bottom, and then kind of erase the elongated tip there that's a little bit longer than I wanted it to be. Okay, I have two shadow brows in the exact position that I want them to be. So those would now, you know, this would be it, all I do to it this time. They're thinner than what my finished eyebrow is going to be. I'll thicken them up each time as I go along. I'll probably end up having 4 to 5 firings on this eyebrow all total. But this is all I'm going to do to the shadow brow this time. So I'm going to stop this video and get my paints ready and move on to the first coat on the lips then. Okay, so there are, oh, one thing I forgot to tell you. Your little shadow brows here. in order to make sure they've got the right position on the head, if I were to continue this shadow brow at the current arch that it's following, it would come down and around and point to this tear duct. This shadow brow would come down and around and point to this tear duct. By looking at it that way, then I know I have this arch on the shadow brow correct. Not sure if you can see that from here or not, but if those eyebrows at the nose continued longer, each of them would point to the opposite tear duct. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and stop this, and we'll go on to the next little video, which is going to be the first coat on the mouth. Okay.